Ironside will not be seen tonight, so we may bring you the following special program.
Word Balloon is brought to you by the League of Word Balloon Listeners.
Working with Doctor Strange, I could really just embrace the earliest version of that character, which frankly looked like he was half English, half Asian in the way he was drawn in his first appearance. His eyes had a different kind of shape, and his whole aesthetic was really beaming the sense of Asian culture coming forward. But he also looked like a definitely much older guy, so I didn't hold back with that in the illustration. I'm somebody who likes to embrace age as a definitive characteristic that you can really get into much deeper character with somebody when you show more form and grit in the face. It's more shadow. It's more lines for the artist to hook into.
Good afternoon, everybody. Time again for Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress here. This guy's been burning it up at both of the big two lately. Big books announced and already established books as well, plus his own stuff. It's always good to bring a new conversation with Kyle Starks. Good to see you, Kyle. Welcome back.
Hey, I'm always glad to be here. I'm a little upset Ironside won't be seen tonight, though. But, I mean, if we're going to interrupt it, it should be us.
I blew it. I should have played my Magnum is not being shown, so we can show you this after-school special. I
love it.
That's my passion. It's ridiculous, Kyle, but I do. I look, all these tapeworms back in the day would do these, commercial interruptions or whatever of regular programming. They crack me up. I don't know.
I think they're great, too.
Excellent, man. Very, very cool. We've been meaning to talk since the spring when your one-shot of Peacekeeper came out. Peacemaker. It is
Peacemaker. And Thanos. I think the one shot Thanos was in there at one point. We've been trying to talk for a while. Yeah.
Yes, I always get it wrong, and I always say Peacekeeper instead of Peacemaker. And Paul Kupperberg, another guy who knows how to tell a Peacemaker story, always gives me shit for it, and he's right to do that because I feel like an old man. Oh yeah, Peacekeeper.
There's a lot of names. There's a lot of names out there to keep track of. People, when people talk about my book Assassination, they always call it Assassination Nation, and it's just like at this point, like, what can I do? And I'm sure everywhere else feels the same way.
Here we go. Dennis Hoffman right away goes loving Peacemaker tries hard.
Hoffman.
What do we do? What do we need to do to convince DC to let Kyle draw a backup or two? Totally, Kyle. That would be great to see, man.
Well, first of all, this is funny for several reasons. One, Steve Pugh just sent in the last page of Peacemaker today, and I did the whole thing that you do. What an honor, and this is all truth, not me. It's not hyperbole. What an honor to be gifted Steve Pugh to be teamed up. I'm like, such great work, like of all the way. The last page is amazing. Everything's perfect. The last issue is perfect, and he's like, I would have loved to have seen you draw it, and I'm like, absolutely not. One, nobody wants that in the direct market. Dennis Hoffman wants it. All right, but the market, the comic shops do not want it, and it's funny because
really?
I get to do a variant cover. I did a variant cover for issue 6, so you will get to see, I guess, what if I drew Peacemaker, but it's just for a variant cover. They don't want me drawing things. If the direct market complains about Chris Schweitzer and Erica Henderson, they don't want my art for sure. Like I wish the direct market was like, look at all this cool stuff. But I've seen them complain. Dennis wants it. I've seen people complain about Joe Quinones being too cartoony, which is like the craziest. By the way, if you can hear the background noise, my wife and kids are getting home, and the dogs are about to lose their minds.
That's all right, man. Oh, yeah. No. Barely.
Hopefully it's not too bad.
No, not at all. Everything's good, man. That's disappointing. Certainly, your writing and art immediately caught my attention back in the day. I always bring up Sex Castle. That's one of my
Yeah.
favorite things you ever did. And certainly I would think maybe like even maybe in an in-story way, if Peacemaker had to like, you know, kind of get some therapy or something, and you know, you could have the Doctor that let him draw his own adventures or something like that.
Yeah, he gets conked on the head, and I draw 3-page. Well, maybe if there's another arc, and I've not heard anything. I think it's doing pretty well, though I don't know that for sure. So hopefully, I would honestly, if I'm doing a direct market book that gets to be that kind of book, which is sort of big action comedy, you know, humorous, big action superhero. Like, I hope it's Steve Pugh. I would love to work with him again, if not Peacemaker, something else in the Big Two universe. He was. I can't imagine. I don't know that many artists either, but I can't imagine a better partner for me for doing that type of story. He gets comedy. His stuff looks direct market. He does big action well. He does the heart stuff really well. And the last 2 issues have like some pretty strong emotional beats in them that he nails. I think he's just someone said when they announced it that it's perfect casting, and I stand. I think that's true. I think me and Steve were. I don't know who you get. I mean, I guess you could get like Morrison and Quietly. It'd probably be pretty good, but you know, I don't know for this book who would have been better than me and Steve, honestly.
Well, and
I say humbly.
And Steve did Russell's Flintstones, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, and he's doing Harley Quinn.
Yes,
like he just has a knack for it. Yeah,
sure.
He's so good.
No, I absolutely agree with you, man. I'm reasonably certain I saw him at C2E2 this last spring. Maybe not.
He's a British boy. He wasn't there.
Oh, okay. It's
a Steve.
Sorry,
it's a different Steve.
It is a different Steve. You're absolutely right. But I agree with Nerdette, who says, not gonna lie, this is DC's best book right now, which is very
sweet of you.
Yeah, how about that? I think that's terrific, man. And rightfully so. Are there now? We're going to talk, and I know you can't talk much about Wild Dog, and I'm very excited about that as well for you. And this promotional image has popped up. So So and forgive me, the artist again on Wild Dog. It's Gilliam.
Here's the thing. I found out the same way everyone else did. They draw the Flash, and they're good. That's all I know. I have not had an email or anything. I haven't seen a page. I don't know their name, but I know this is Simone. That's Simone Di Matteo. I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that. Who did that cover? Who also did a great Peacemaker cover. But it's whoever's drawn the Flash. And I apologize. I just don't, because they haven't communicated very well with me. I only found out when it was coming out and what issue and all that stuff. Whenever last week or whenever it was. So it's sort of coming at me at the same time, which is comics. That's comic for you.
Yeah.
No one wants to communicate. You know that, John.
I do.
I'm stoked about it. I heard there's no notes on the first issue. That anthology I think is going to be really interesting. I thought I was getting like 10 pages, like maybe 30 pages altogether.
Yeah.
And I'm doing 3 22-page installments. So I get to squeeze a lot more than I planned. And that's a character who I'm writing in a similar way to Peacemaker. Because that's kind of the version I like of Wild Dog, where he's sort of a small town kind of dummy who has a penchant for violence and is a little funny. He's kind of a funny guy, but not real funny. But I like sort of everyman, down to earth everyman trying the best they can. I'm really excited about it. Wild Dog sort of, I don't know if I should make sure DC's not watching. They're not. But my comic career kind of started with Wild Dog when I was on Twitter years ago. I remember I had 50 followers, and I had 50 followers on Twitter. And I said, if I get to 250 followers, I'll do a Wild Dog fan comic. And
hilarious.
At the time, which was, I don't know how, something about the social circle, Tom Spurgeon, rest in peace, saw it and retweeted it. And I had 200 followers in about 2 hours. And I thought for sure I'd have like a week to figure this out, a whole week, right? So the first big thing I did was a Wild Dog fan comic. I won some fake award. Some website was like, some random, it was like, hey, best web comics. And it made my career in many ways. A lot of people got eyes on me that didn't before. So it's a weird circle to be doing Wild Dog again. So I'm kind of doing that version, like my version of Wild Dog, which I don't think is too far off from the way people view him. Max Allan Collins, and in fact, I remember Tom Beatty. I hope that's right.
Terry Beatty.
Terry Beatty. Okay, I wasn't for sure. I remember Terry Beatty saw this was years. I mean, I'd have to look. It was years ago, and 10 years ago, maybe longer. And Terry Beatty was like, he's like, our guy wasn't like kind of a smart ass like that, but I like it. And they're like, well, I think Wild Dog should be fun because he's kind of a ridiculous character, but I also love the Midwest, and I love the idea of a DC Midwest and sort of drawing attention to that as that there's other places besides Gotham and Metropolis.
100%.
And I love that. Like I live in a small town. I think most people live in a small town, and I like that. So to get to do that with this character who I think can be a lot of fun and really interesting and is a very human sort of domestic look at. I'm really excited about it. I think they gave me no notes. I was like, they're for sure going to be like, don't do that. Don't do that. I do this like basically the story is a minor supervillain has decided they're sort of tired of getting beat up by Batman and Superman. So they're like, we're going to go to the Midwest and we'll just own the Midwest. And the first issue, and even probably until the end of the second issue, I really want this. Who is it? You know, who is he going to use? Who could it be? And I hope that happens. Though things are so rushed and it's part of anthology, maybe not, but I hope the readers have fun. Like, who could it be? And I kind of look forward to people maybe sending me them tweets, you know, who is this minor supervillain? There's some hints. There's little hints. And then at the end of the second part, I will reveal that. And then of course in the third, it's fun. I got to do stuff. I was for sure someone would be like, don't do that. And they didn't. So it's like, which is just like Peacemaker. Peacemaker is the same way. I thought there's no way they'll let me use Snowflame, who's a cocaine powered supervillain. I was like, there's no way they'll let me use him, but I'll ask because I needed a villain. And they're like perfect. And over stuff like that. I thought for sure at some point they're going to say no. Of course, that's Black Label. And I think I'm fairly certain Wild Dog is canonical to the DC universe.
Wow.
As far as I know, no one's told me it isn't. So Black Label, obviously, they're a little bit loosey or goosey. Like you can kind of do whatever you want.
Sure.
In fact, they kind of encourage it. We'll see. I'm real pleased with DC. I did it with me and Schweitzer, who's my longtime partner, right after Peacemaker, or for me, I just wrapped up my writing duties on Peacemaker. They asked if we wanted to do a Harley Quinn black, white, and red. And so like DC's great. DC's like throwing stuff at me. They're letting me be me, which is important to find that balance, the big two balance of to still tell Kyle Stark stories, and yet not upset the fan base. You know what I mean? And Marvel Unleashed was the same. Like, why did they ask me to write a Pet Avengers book? I don't know. But I was like, I'll do it. But I have this idea. You have to kind of let me do this idea. And we found sort of a middle ground, right? And this is my new sort of stage. It's interesting. It's an interesting challenge. Thanos too. Thanos was interesting because they're like, do you want to write a Thanos one shot? And I was like, no. I was like, what is Thanos like? Someone's gonna be like, we could do that. But if I asked anyone I knew, I'm like, hey, what's Thanos' deal? And I'm talking about like my peers. What's his powers? They'd be like, I don't know, just whatever power he needs. I'm like, probably, right? He's so vaguely defined outside of the Infinity Gauntlet and death, like those two things.
Yep.
He's sort of vaguely defined. I was more of a Star Fox guy. I'm not gonna lie. He was getting kisses. You know what I mean? So I was like, not really. But the thing is, I thought about it, and I thought, well, if I could do what I thought was a story a Thanos fan would really like the challenge of that, which is him being so powerful and so focused. So I'm really pleased with that story, and that's where I sort of was like, this is how I'm going to do big two stories, is to make the thing that's still like something the fans will love, and also still feel like something that I wanted to make, the story I wanted to tell. And it's an interesting challenge because of the sort of sandbox collaborative nature of that. Yeah.
I so get it, man. And I'm glad that they're all letting you put your humor in and your kind of storytelling. This is great, man. No, and it's funny how you're inching towards, more regular heroes, whether you want to or not. I mean, I
kind of do.
Oh, good, because I regarding Wild Dog, I mean, yeah, man, I was there for Action Comics Weekly when Beatty and Collins created this.
Yeah,
and he was more monosyllabic and kind of a straighter character, despite, I mean, the ridiculous outfit and the hockey mask.
I love it. I love it.
But
You know, and here's the I love that series. That series, I mean, for all the huge Wild Dog fans out there, that series did this interesting. It did a lot of interesting things. But sort of the premise that it threw out there, which is sort of who is Wild Dog, and it's funny because it's 4 issues, and I think like me with this villain, it was like, oh, we really want you to try to figure it out, but they don't give any clues. Like it's not much of a mystery. It's really just a romp, and that's what I think. What I like about Wild Dog so much is that it's Midwestern. It's different. It's such a unique thing, but he's so singular. Like there's certain characters that are just singular, and I think Wild Dog is one of them. Where Wild Dog could have at some point, and I think maybe recently he's sort of been directed this way. He could have just been a generic minor superhero you put when you needed like just a street level hero guy, right? Like you just throw like Gangbusters, they just throw these minor. And somehow he avoided that, which I think is great. And I know some Black Label stuff. People are like, I don't love it. Listen, it's Black Label. It doesn't matter. You can do whatever you want. Like, you don't have to pretend like it's real.
Right.
But I'm very interested. I'm interested in doing everything. You know, I have an unannounced forthcoming Dark Horse project, which is not humorous at all. Listen, I say this. It always ends up accidentally being a little humorous here and there. I can't help it. But to me, it's like this is a dark horror story. The superhero stuff is like as long as I can. Pet Avengers is superhero stuff, right? Like
right.
So I'm interested in doing I want to do everything. How long I'm able to do it for, I think will be interesting. I'm really jealous of those guys who can do 30 issues of one book, where nothing can ever happen to the main character. Really, I don't have my head wrapped around that. Yeah, Guy Gardner. Yes, Guy Gardner would be great. Sorry, I'm gonna read the comments.
No. Yeah. Janie Smith says Kyle Stark's Guy Gardner Black Label story would be fun. I completely agree. But I'm even thinking weirder sea level DC, and I don't know how deep you're. Yeah, man. Ultra the Multi Alien is one of my favorite. There, Adam boy, of course you do. Geez, I mean, I've never really read a satisfying Inferior 5 story. And I appreciate the idea of the Inferior 5. And if you were ever to do a teen book, that would be my suggestion for DC for you, beyond the Pet Avengers, obviously.
If you here's my deep cut, would love to do DC book is Hero Hotline. Hero Hotline is my deep cut.
Like Dial H for Hero, or what is?
No,
tell me about Hero Hotline. God, dude, I'm an old man DC fan, and I don't remember Hero Hotline. Talk to me.
I'd have to see when it came out. I started working at a comic shop when I was 14, so that was it was before that, I think. So maybe late 80s. Okay. And the premise was basically, and there's a modern version that I'm not like. There's a modern version I'm not interested in. But the premise was basically, Space Cabbie, of course, he says.
Yes, and I'm a massive. You'd be great doing Space Cabbie. That's fishing in a barrel for you. Good Lord.
It was like a collection of super minor heroes who had like one was a super ventriloquist. One had drinking jingled, so he was stretchy. And the deal was that you would call this number and they would come and do hero things for you. But they were like get a cat out of a tree, basically. They're super minor things, but it's these really unique characters, these really minor, very human characters. One who I'm not gonna remember their names. I think her name was Microwave Bell, right? Okay. Microwave Bell. And she was just like a mom, like a scientist mom, like a single mom who'd made this suit that had sort of like microwave flying powers and was trying to pay her bills, and this was the way she did it. It was just and it's funny. It's funny, but it's not gaggy, though sometimes it's a little close to gaggy. It's a minor deep cut DC thing that I just love because I love that domestication. I love the idea, which is again, I don't want to bounce around, but I will. But like that was sort of why I wanted to do Where Monsters Lie so bad. Is I'm very interested in the domestication of these things that are so otherworldly, right? Because like everyone still has to make a sandwich, right?
Right.
Like Batman has to make a sandwich. Surely at some point he's had a sandwich. You know what I mean? And I'm like, what kind of, is he particular? Or is he just like, what's the protein balance? Like, or is he like, no, he's like, Albert, put mayonnaise on it. What are you doing? Like, I know we're trying to be smart here, but I'm really interested in that. Heroes Hotline, I think it was 6 issues. It might have been more than that.
I looked it up. 1989.
Oh, yeah.
Bob
89. That's what it said.
Bob Rozakis was the writer, and he's one of my favorite backup story writers. And he was the answer man. So if you had a question about DC history, he was like the guy that would always have the column in the comics, the answer man. But he did Private Life of Clark Kent and Superman in the 70s. He did my favorite, Superman the In-Between Years, which is essentially Superman at college. Too old to be Superboy, not quite Superman.
Yeah.
Just crazy shit like that. I love him.
That's funny. Like, I'm a big fan of like following creators. I never thought to see what else the guy who wrote Heroes. I assumed they just got to do this one thing, this one weird thing, and that was it. I love it. Hero Hotline. Check it out.
Absolutely.
Everybody. It's really good.
But yeah, Space Cabbie would be great. I'm so with Jay on that. I think that's a great idea as well.
Yeah, Space Cabbie. Everybody loves Space Cabbie.
I love it. I love that you're looking, because, dude, that's the excitement, because you're like these characters came and went. I mean, all those Joe Simon, what Tom King is working with now in first issue special, and all the Danger Street, but they're all the old first issue special characters, the Lady Cop and the Green Team and all that shit. And it's like, yeah, man, there's gold in them Thar Hills in the right hands. And you're one of those guys, man. So no, I think that's terrific. You're killing it.
There's a real sort of James Gunn. When I did Peacemaker, there was it's just like James Gunn, and I'm like, well, I'm like the poor man's James Gunn, right? Like, I'm kind of funny and I like heartfelt things and I like obscure characters. So I'm here for it. But the thing is like, the reason why you put Javelin in Suicide Squad is because no one cares what you do with Javelin, right? Like, no one cares,
right?
So getting to sort of play with, sort of getting like. And again, I don't want to bounce around, but Marvel Unleashed is very similar, because what is Red Wing's character? What is, like, I'm a character-driven writer. So to sort of create the sort of personal challenges, like what the motivational challenges, like, that's so fascinating. It's more interesting to me of what makes this character than who do they fight, for me, because personal journeys are something I can relate to a lot more than X supervillain just showed up, right? Like, X supervillain's gonna lose, guys. We all know he's gonna lose, but like, will D-Dog be happy by the end of the 4 issues?
D-Dog.
Will D-Dog find love? You know, like, let's.
Well, and I'm glad they're letting you dialogue these characters too, because while I've always appreciated the Pet Avengers, a lot of times it's a silent book, and it's like, well, you know, pets don't talk, and it's like, well, they do on the right animated movie, and they do in the right hands, and it's fun that you give them all such interesting characters. Go through your lineup on Unleashed.
The lineup is it's Throg, who's the Thunder Frog, of course. We all know Throg. It's Red Wing, who is I kept calling him the Falcons' partner, and it's not. It's Captain America's partner. They told me many times. They're like, don't quit saying Falcon. I'm like,
wow,
you know what I mean?
We all know what you mean, but yeah, that's it. And I noticed that in the book, that there is that distinction that, Red Wing is Captain America's bird. Listen, I like Sam as Cap. I think that's great.
I do too.
But it is interesting that it's like, all right, I guess, is there going to be a new Falcon eventually, or maybe there already is?
I think there already is one, which was part of why they were sort of concerned about it. But it goes to show you, like, I don't know. Like, to me, like, what would Red Wing call him? Red Wing's probably not like Cap. He doesn't know about America. He's a bird. Well, he's a smart bird.
And he can fly, so he's superior. He's got the superior, attitude.
That's right. He's a bird of prey, and I'm really. I sent. Listen, I don't want to talk about people when they're not here, but I sent this to a couple peers, and I sent one to Chip, and Chip, who I love, and Chip came in. Like, I had a very long conversation with Chip about sort of dealing with the big two, because I'm him a long time ago, right? I'm just kind of the funny guy.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just
absolutely, Kyle.
I don't think I want to write Batman. I don't think I do, but I'm interested in how he navigated it. So we had a really long conversation, and he really helped me out a lot. So I sent it to them, and he was like, "Oh man, it's so great! Like, Red Wing's such a dick." And I'm like, "Yeah," and it's like, that's the thing, is like trying to figure out the character. So Red Wing's a bird of prey, and I made him sort of like, since he had spent so much time with Steve Rogers, Captain America, and Sam Wilson, that he's he understands tactics. Like, he's smart. So what's his place in this world where Throg is literally a god?
Yeah.
Lockjaw, listen, that dude is crazy powerful. He can teleport between dimensions. He's strong enough to hold the thing in place. Like the Lockjaw is legit. That guy is legit and should be semi-terrifying. Like, what if Lockjaw got rabies? We'd all be in trouble. That's the dog who is Donna Kate Stephen King's ghost dog, and Sassy Chewy Danvers, the Flurkin, not a cat. She's a flirt. She also vaguely defined in comics, incredibly vaguely defined, in both personality and in ability. So that was some work. Lucky the Pizza Dog is in issue 1. He's not on the team. He is on mini covers, but we just love Lucky. We just want to get Lucky in there. So, and D-Dog. Okay. How could I forget everyone's new favorite pet of character? It's D-Dog.
We get the strange origin of D-Dog in Unleashed as well.
Yeah, she's going to be the best hero there ever was, one way or the other.
So was she with D-Man, or is that the one that?
No, it's in issue 1 because Redwing, because he's wearing his mask, which he just found in the dump. And he's like, "What's your affiliation with D-Man?" And she's like, "I don't know who that is." And he's like, "Then what does the D stand for in your name? You're D-Dog. He's D-Man." And she says it stands for dog. It's dog.
Of course it does. Absolutely.
The best adjective D-Dog could think of is to be more of a dog, to be double dog.
And it's a proportionate, without spoiling, a proportionate bad guy for them to face. I would imagine the story's going to get more complex as it goes further. But where
big bad at the end.
Yeah,
I'll tell you, John. What's interesting is I guess Donnie put a similar little Pet Avengers group in Thor, which I think was Bats and Throg and Lockheed, and then like 2 crows. I don't remember. And I guess Marvel really liked the idea of sort of like this serious, like they're not a joke. They're not like it's not like a little kitty. And that's really what we were going for. So it's like, well, who's the meanest, worst villain they could fight that was available that them beating wouldn't ruin. So I think by the end, I think that will be a successful, hey, Cryptid Zeker 415. I'm hoping by the end that is something that it goes, oh, okay, we could see these guys again, and they're not just like a funny little like nostalgia. What's the word I'm looking like a cheap little trick? You know what I mean? Like they're a real thing. I hope that's the case. If not, it's one really good Pet Avengers story, and I'm proud of it. I wrote. I'm done writing it. Obviously,
okay.
Jesus is Jesus. I assume it's Jesus. I don't know why I said Jesus. Jesus. he's so unbelievably good. Yeah, they could not have found a better artist to draw this book.
Oh, I agree. Because there are hints of comedy, but also Jesus' style is absolutely a Marvel book, and I think it does. I've always appreciated various Pet Avenger iterations, but sometimes they are a bit too pretty, and they got that
cartoony.
Yeah, sometimes cartoony, but that oh god, what was those movies with the 3 dogs? Amazing Journey, Fabulous Journey, whatever.
Incredible Journey.
Wasn't a fabulous.
2 dogs and a cat. 2 dogs.
Yes, that's right. 2 dogs and a cat. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, and that's what the older Pet Avengers books sometimes would evoke. But this is like, no, you want a Marvel action book? This is a Marvel action book, and they're funny, and the team dynamic is good. So no, man, you're killing it. I think it's great. Oh, Cryptic also is a Peacemaker fan. So.
Hey, we love it. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think, it's all those things. One of the things, and I'm trying to continue because I think it's important, especially in the direct market, is even if you look at what Steve's done, is to try to play it as straight as possible. I think if you lean into the comedy, it ruins it, because like the dialogue is funny, and what I write for them to do is funny. You don't need to ham it up. Like hamming it up, it draws away from what it is. So I've been very lucky for a while that I haven't had that happen. So it could have happened here. It could have happened with Peacemaker. Steve never goes too far. I can't even think. I mean, Schweitzer would ham it up, but that was the aesthetic we were going for those books. They were much more comedy driven. So I think as long as people draw the comics, it's going to still have that humor it's still going to have that heart that I want and feel like what you want it to feel like, which is a big action spectacular. And yeah, he's unbelievable. They're so good.
Makes sense, man. Very, very much so. No, it makes sense. And again, I'm really glad these editors. Who's your editor in Marvel?
Alana Smith and Caitlin Lindvelt. I hope I didn't mess that up. You just put me on the spot. Alana Smith is my primary editor. She was good. She was pretty good.
Cool.
And it was Chris Conroy and Matthew Levine at DC. Matthew Levine, I adore. I adore him. I've been really lucky with editors for a while. Do I have any quarrel?
Yeah, Kingsport Cal wants to know if you had any quarrels with the Peacemaker TV series.
I'm not sure. Listen, since I'm done writing it, the show came first, so I can't have any quarrels with the show. Obviously, I would say,
yeah. How much? I mean, obviously, we had the second Suicide Squad movie already out, but yeah, I don't know how much.
The show was done. The show was done.
Oh, you'd already seen. So yeah. So was that in your head when you were writing it? Obviously.
Oh, 100%.
Sure.
100%. Because and they came like it's funny how this bit came across is because I'm watching the show. I'm loving it. I'm a wrestle boy. Love John Cena. I love James Gunn. I thought it was great. That also the Reacher show was on TV that summer. It was a great summer for Kyle Starks. If you like big guys throwing punches,
this is
true.
And
a peer of mine, a mutual tweeted like, DC, why isn't there a Peacemaker book, and why isn't Kyle Starks writing it? And I'll be honest, at no point was I watching that show and go, oh, I could have done this. I was like, I love this because it's my aesthetic, right? Like it's literally my aesthetic.
Yeah.
And so I was like, ha ha ha, call me DC. You know what I mean? I'm available. And someone called me immediately. That, by the way, is not how it works. That is not how it works. And there was like, I'd love to, because it's like, I think this character is what I write anyway. It's like, it's literally what I do. And if I can come up with a good story, I'm in for it. And I think there was some brief conversation, like, tonally, what do you want to be? It's like, well, you want it to be the show. Everyone loves the show.
Absolutely.
No one loves the weird, crazy Peacemaker from 1984. No one cares. No one cared about Peacemaker prior to any of this.
Right? I hear you, man. No, I hear you.
The closest you got was the Morrison thing, whose name escapes me. You know what it is, which was a one shot with him, right? No one cared about Peacemaker. So to me, why would you not make the thing people want? It doesn't make any difference. So that's what we agreed on. That's what I wanted to do anyway, because it's like, this character is great this way. And so there's like maybe like one email, which is like, how do you want to do it? It's like as close to the show as possible. So if I had any quarrels, the quarrels would be as such, because I'm going to talk out of class, John. I'm going to talk out of class. Obviously, I didn't get to use Eagly. I didn't get to use Vigilante. That was because the TV stuff is different than the comic stuff, and people were talking about maybe certain things. That stuff is really frustrating to me. But in the end, you know, we brought out the Red Bee, who I adore. Man, anyone in Suicide Squad was in there because they don't matter. I'm just reading the comments. So, right, like, I didn't get to use Eagly. I didn't get to use Vigilante. So instead, we have Bruce Wayne, the Pug, and we have the Red Bee. The Red Bee is if you were like, if there's a minor character you want to use, it's probably Red Bee. He's just he's such of his time and so ridiculous. And if you're writing humor, not humor, he's just like, you couldn't ask for more. And I very much like, at the time we had started, because Red Bee's whole thing is like, he's super positive all the time. Like, he's very upbeat, he's very empathetic. And I like that. I thought that sort of that Ted Lasso type character, like, comics needed something like that. And so Red Bee is that guy. And also, you know what, like, comic is that Peacemaker needs somebody like that. Like, Peacemaker, his life is bad, and he's kind of dumb, and that makes it worse for him. And he's doing the best he can, but no one likes him. Like, that's rough. So to have the Red Bee sort of come in and support him endlessly is great. One day, years from now, I'll tell, like, how it became Bruce Wayne the Pug. Because it's a funny story, but I don't know how much they want me getting behind the scenes stuff. But so I didn't have any quarrels. I love the show. I mean, we drew from the show as much as possible. I would have put all those characters in there if I could have.
I so understand, and you're right. I liked the weirdness of Peacekeeper because I remember seeing him in the Charlton days before
Yeah.
DC acquired all the Charlton heroes, and that weird helmet and his whole look, and kind of this weird, almost Captain America sort of guy, and even Kupperberg. See, as you know, in the '80s when he was created, Paul was leaning into the grim and gritty, which was
the time.
Yeah, absolutely, man, and that's why it was so psychotic. And truly, I mean, in the DC universe, as far as comics goes, well, Vigilante killed himself. Pretty grim. I mean, it got that grim. And in fact, they just at Terrificon a couple weeks ago was talking about anti-heroes, and with Paul on the panel and Paul Levitz as well, and Jimmy Palmiotti and Carl Potts. And yeah, I mean, both Vigilante and Peacemaker came up, and it's just like, what do you guys think of all that? It's interesting. I don't know, Kyle, and I would imagine because of what happened during COVID, Black Lives Matter, the police and the army, some of them adopting the Frank Castle skull. I almost wonder, is Frank Castle, like, could you do a Peacemaker like take with Frank Castle, and would it be accepted? I don't know. Probably not.
Man, I tell you what, because I feel like Punisher is one of those characters on paper. I was raised, and like, I went to college. I also watched every 80s action movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's an 80s action thing about Punisher that makes him very engaging to me. For that type of fun, the type of fun you can have as sort of an A-team commando.
Yes.
But I wouldn't touch that with 1,000-foot pole. With 1,000-foot pole.
Different world.
I don't know how you backtrack from that outside of just making him. And I think you could do it. I could do it, but people would be mad. Large groups of people would be mad.
They'd be appalled. Yeah.
Because it's like off the top of my head, I just listened to a long podcast and talked about the mayor of Minnesota, Jesse Ventura, who used to be a Navy SEAL. He was a pre-Navy SEAL, right? And it talked about his politics as mayor, and I always thought that he surely leaned conservative. He's a libertarian. I don't know the difference because I'm a dumb guy, and I'll say that every time. But that dude was, when the trans and bathrooms came up, he was like, "What are you doing? Let people use the bathroom. Who gives a shit?" He was very open. He's very LGBTQT plus supportive. And I think that's what you do with Frank, is you make Frank, it's the same Frank you always know, but Frank's also like, who gives a shit? Like, everyone's cool unless you're a bad guy, and it would make people mad. But on paper, I like that, which is Wild Dog, which is frankly, Wild Dog was DC's response to Punisher, which again is hilariously weird because he's in Quad Cities, Iowa. He's in BFE nowhere, but he's literally DC. You can tell that they tasked those two to come up with a Punisher equivalent. And I'm sure they did the same thing with Kupperberg. He did that run. He did that 80s run.
Right.
Yeah, because it's super violent. And I'm sure, like, we want a Punisher. And listen, Peacemaker is the guy for it. So that's a smart instinct. And they weren't doing anything of use with him. So it makes sense. I like that character. I like Punisher on paper. I don't want to be the guy. And here's why. Because I think that what you do is you do make people mad. But like I said before, my sort of stance on these characters is I want the fans to I want to be the fans' thing still, right? I want to be my thing, but I want it to be the thing that people go, that's a dope X character. Name them. And I don't want to be disruptive. I don't want to change them unless it's something like a Peacemaker, or it's something like a Red Bee, or it's Black Label, because who cares? Who cares? And listen, I loved, I read that Vigilante when I was too young to read it, but when that character shows up, we're from a different era, probably, John, and we're probably more open to things than a lot of people, but I love that Vigilante. Good. That Vigilante in the Peacemaker series is great. He's amazing. And we need that character. We need characters like that who's maybe on the spectrum. You know what I mean? Who's clearly socially awkward. I think that's modern. These are very modern things that need to sort of bleed in. One of the things I like about Peacemaker is that he feels very old school, but I think he's an incredibly modern character because he is dumb and sort of machismo violent, but he's very open to learning about other people and to growing as it's this very interesting modern sort of way to live. And we need more of that. You know what I mean? We need more heroes who are not accepting because they're good. They're accepting because they're learning and because that's how you be good, right?
Right.
Like, I just think it's really interesting. And I think Vigilante, like, I wish I could have used Vigilante. I'm so glad I got to do Red B because I brought another character I thought should have existed. That was a lot of fun. But yeah, man, I'm all for it. And that's the thing. I think someone said like they knew him before. Everyone in Suicide Squad was someone who didn't matter. That's the James Gunn's brilliance. Is they're like, do you want to make a Marvel movie? And he's like, yeah. Can I use a bunch of characters? Can I use Rocket Raccoon and Groot? And no one cares. No one's going to be mad if you make a weird Groot. And it's so smart. It's just so smart. And I hope he keeps doing. I mean,
Yeah.
what's he the Booster Gold movie? Like, how good will that be? It'll be great because people don't really care a lot. Maybe Booster Gold more than Rocket Raccoon. I honestly, I read. I'm a Grunwald fan. I think we talked about this before, and I used to read the Marvel Handbook beginning to end, and I only vaguely recalled Star-Lord when he showed up. I only vaguely knew. I mean, I don't know if I ever read a Star-Lord comic, right? I read Rocket Raccoon because everyone loved Mignola. If you were deep enough, you're like, this artist is unbelievable, right?
In a random buy, I bought one of those black and white science fiction anthologies of Marvel, and that was my first exposure to Star Wars.
He was in there. Yeah, it's crazy. It's just a smart way of telling stories. Yeah. Of course, we talked about this before. I would love to do, but it's like you don't. Red B does not matter. There's no way anyone cares if you change Red B. I could see maybe a few people going, this Wild Dog is a little less heroic than we would like. You know what I mean? He's a little silly. Sure, but he's fun, right? It's fun.
Yes.
And I don't want to ruin a history of a character. I don't want to change the history of a character. I don't want to necessarily Black Label's different. Sure. I think it's important to tell those stories still that people want. I think it's really important to be like, someone in chat named a superhero character they like.
Sure.
Guy Gardner.
Take requests.
Guy Gardner has a lot. He has depths. So Guy Gardner's a good one because you could go so many different ways and no one will complain because Guy Gardner has so many ways he's been viewed.
Yes.
And stuff like that. I think like that's what you want, but I don't want people to go, why is Guy Gardner? It's not him. He's not him. Right. This doesn't seem like something he would do.
Kyle, you are, and honestly, this has been my frustration. Everyone hates the fact, oh, here he goes again about Star Trek. I can't help it, man. New Star Trek drives me nuts because I appreciate their ambitions on trying different things, but you got to color within the lines. And if it's not consistent, and there's a way to tell really interesting stories, but stay consistent with what we've got before. And clearly you honor that with these DC Marvel heroes that they're letting you play with. And that's the great thing, man, because then there is room to put your spin on these things. But like you said, you don't want to piss off people that, those
I don't want to
500 fans of Wild Dog that have loved it.
Right.
And it's like, okay, I can see this fitting. I can see this making sense.
Right. Yeah. I want to tell my story, but I don't want to change. Well, like some characters just don't matter. You know what I mean? Some characters don't matter. Yeah, Wild Dog. Like, listen, it doesn't make, but like, Blue Beetle. Like, what you would make him not Latino? Like, that's you don't want to. There's just certain things like keep it the way it is. I'm trying to think of just like a semi-minor character like Booster Gold. He's still from the future. You know what I mean? He's still kind of a doofus. He's a bohunk. You don't change that. But I want to find the path that tells a story. I don't want to just write characters for character's sake. I don't have interest in that. I want to tell interesting stories that I want to read with these characters, and that's the path we're on right now. Hopefully we stay on it. Hopefully we can do it for a while.
Have you ever had a conversation with a guy like Mark Russell, who's I think done similar things in a lot of, we were talking, obviously the Flintstones, but even that One Star Squadron, that Power Girl was part of that team. And it's the same.
Yeah, with Red Tornado.
Certainly.
I've talked to Chip. Chip and I are friendly. And obviously he's a comedy guy who's done other things, which is what I want to do. I mean, if they keep giving me opportunities, eventually there's just going to be a superhero story. It'll just be a superhero story, right? But again, I'm always more interested in their lives I'm more interested in their struggles than their battles, if that makes any sense. So for me,
Yes.
it's like if someone, no one named anything in chat, we'll say if someone's like, hey, do you want to do Ghost Rider? Be like, sure. I don't have an interest in all that stuff, but it's like, what if he's having girl troubles? You know what I mean?
I do.
Like that. What if he finds a stray dog? Because all books have to have dogs in them. I'm trying to get away from it, people. Every book I did for years had a hitman in it, and now they all have dogs in it. And I was like, I'm done. And then I was like, oh, Wild Dog technically has a dog in it. So here I am again. But
well, I was going to say,
go ahead. If I can give them, I'm and I think it's because when I started reading, it was the 80s, and then the 90s, of course, got very gritty, which I was like, the mid 90s, I was like, I'm kind of out. I went to college. But the early stuff, it was always a lot of, Peter's fighting the Rhino, but he also doesn't want Mary Jane to find out who he is. And he's trying to get a date to prom. And like, there's something about lives that's very interesting to me. And adding that someone can shoot the sun out of their eyes to that adds an interesting element. And it's like, that's the thing, is like, I want to tell stories. I don't think I have it in me to be like, oh man, I have a really great mole man scheme. You know what I mean?
I do.
I don't know what.
All right, a couple things. First of all, my favorite Spider-Man comics, especially from the Silver Age, when Peter's got the flu and he still has to go out. It's one of the best cartoon episodes too. Yeah. Or that great thing where Spider-Man is at the laundromat and all he's got is his mask on. And he's waiting for his costume to finish drying. I love that stuff.
The X-Men playing baseball, right?
Yes.
Like there's something about, I mean, I always think they're still human beings. And as I think that, immediately I see like Superman's face. I'm like, I guess maybe not all of them are still just human beings, because Superman probably hasn't had a sandwich. He doesn't need to eat that.
No. You know, Catherine Immerman wrote back when they brought back the 80-page Giants a couple of years ago, which was a great testing ground for a lot of newcomers to come in and do something. And
that's kind of what this is.
There you go. Yeah, and I want to hear about the rest of the mythology. But Catherine wrote this fantastic 10-page story where Lois had the flu, and Clark is just trying to do everything he can to get the medicine and all the typical husbandly
get the humidifier going.
And even though he's Superman, he's still Clark Kent and fucks everything up. And it's just great because Lois got the thermometer in her mouth and that frown on her face, like he's doing it again. And it's so great because it's purely Clark Kent. And it's a great. Or the other thing I loved was
I love it.
I want to say it was that monthly Skip Week book. Was it Batman Chronicles? Devin Grayson wrote a story where it was Bruce just in the Batcave and just driving himself nuts, and he's just keep checking in with Barbara's on monitor duty, and well, did you check this neighborhood? Oh yeah, everything's fine. And it's like, well, maybe do this, maybe do that. And finally, Nightwing's there, and he's like, hey, maybe you can leave us alone because we're having a romantic evening. And he's like, all right, sorry.
Oh.
Ultimately, he calls Aquaman because from the earthquake that I think happened during No Man's Land and everything, the giant penny got like lost in a Batcave fissure, and he needed Aquaman to help him.
I love it.
And they pull the penny out, and it ends with them watching TV. And Arthur goes, Bruce, you could just call, and if you need someone to hang out with, I'm around.
Yeah.
And
I love stuff like that.
Yeah, man.
That story you told about Superman, the idea of him being Superman but not knowing what to do with a sick wife is the greatest thing I've ever. Like, that's the type of stuff. Like, I love it. I live for it. It's so good.
Character moments, man. This is what Bendis has been saying this to me for 17 years, and he's like, these. The Thing and Doctor Doom can punch themselves a million times. It's the conversation they have. That's where I agree. I always say that like Doctor Doom wants to rule the world, but these two guys have been having this fight since school, since college. Yeah. And with Victor Von Doom, it's Ben, you dumb jock. You're an asshole. You've always been an asshole. And Ben's the same way. Vic, I've always hated you. I don't know why Reed thinks you're so smart. You're that weird little asshole that was at school, and that's why they hate each other. And it's like, yeah, man, more scenes with those two guys because there's that history, and that's what comes out.
I think for me, the comics sort of way between those two things, which is like the character moments we love, and the biggest moment, like the biggest heroic moment. Those to me are the two things that I'm most interested in, is in trying to figure. Man, I think about and what. Sure, with the X-Men, I like for character stuff. I think about, and only because we were talking about it recently when Nightcrawler and Wolverine and Colossus were like, "Listen, Colossus is sad about getting dumped. Let's take him to the bar and we'll just talk it out." And they get there and Juggernaut's just there having a drink. That's one of my favorite issues because it's domestic and it feels real, and it's like, hey, we're gonna go to the bar. So and so's had a rough day, and then you see your nemesis there. It's the worst, right? I love that stuff.
Yes.
I got to say, it's
Batman Returns when Catwoman and Bruce are dancing and they suddenly discover each other's identities, and Michelle Pfeiffer's like, "Do we have to start hitting each other now?" No, it's real moments like that. I think those are great. Well, it's the contrast, man. I mean, that's the thing. Yeah. So no, you get it. Yeah.
The contrast is 100% what I love, because it's so serious and it's so. I mean, literally, it's end of the world almost all the time. But like. Someone they still had to eat lunch. I don't know. It's like they still had to eat lunch. Someone had to go at some point. Green Arrow had to run to get lunch, right? Or some. I don't know who does it. Snapper Carr's probably still doing it for all I know. That's the stuff I love. But also, my favorite stuff in 80s action movies, and even with my favorite, because I've been reading comics forever, right? It's those most heroic moments. And how do you get both? How do you balance that? I think this book very much ends for Peacemaker. I mean, very much has that moment. I think Wild Dog has something like that, which is big for the stakes. It's a smaller city, right? So
sure.
The stakes are different. Obviously, they're not fighting Eclipso or Starro. He's fighting who is it? Who is the mystery villain? But those heroic states are important. It's like that's what I'm trying to balance. It's like the same way I try to balance this sort of heartfelt moments in comedy, which I'm not doing comedy. It's humor, but I don't think anyone acts. No one's a clown in my books unless they are specifically clearly they're there for to be a clown. Because I think the idea of all these people being real is so engaging to me. Even like I said, even with the pet Avengers, we're not calling them that. Even with the pet Avengers, it's like how do I find the real characters here? What are their motivations? You know what I mean? Like, because otherwise, who cares? Who cares that a bird just fights crime? Like, who cares? And it's like I think that's really engaging. I think it's really, really interesting, and hopefully, I get to do it for a while. Even at the point, and listen, Bendis is a great. Because his character stuff's so strong, even when it's huge. It's like I hope at my this is going to sound backwards. At my worst, when I'm doing just a superhero story, which I hope doesn't come, but if I do, I hope people are like, oh, it's like poor man's Bendis. Like I'll take that.
Well, even Jeff Johns in Infinite Crisis, there's a moment where it's Green Lantern and Green Arrow, and they're about to go into a death mission, and Hal says, hey, I got those tickets we wanted for the Yankee game next week. And he's like, we're about to face death. He's like, hey, life goes on. We're still, he goes,
we'll be all right.
Hey,
Hal says that because he has a ring that will protect him from anything. Green Arrow's like, I have a stick. What are you doing? I'm glad you'll get to see that game, sir.
That's true. That's absolutely true. All right. As we transition into your creator-owned stuff, we can start with, as I always like to bring up, Sex Castle, and that, of course, has confused Kingsport Cal. I'm a big fan. Well, and again, your love of 80 movies, that's kind of the inspiration for Sex Castle.
Yeah.
So tell people about it.
Yeah, Sex Castle was my first book. It's my love letters to 80s. I say it's the greatest 80s action movie never made. It's about Shane Sex Castle, who is like the former world's greatest hitman killer, who's just trying to give it up. He goes to small town America. And of course, the killing never stops. It was nominated for an Eisner. It was my first Eisner. I optioned it to the Workaholics before it even came out. It was a weird first book. Because I didn't think anyone would care. I did it as a Kickstarter because I love making comics, and I didn't think anyone would care, but it got a lot of attention. It's my first book. Maybe still my best book. Maybe that's a book.
I hear you.
It's a book. Yeah, it's a book. I can read it, and if you're creative anyway, I found creative people understand. But I read it, and I wouldn't change anything. I mean, maybe I wish there was better art now, however many years later, but
Okay.
I wouldn't change anything. King Forgo says assassin stuff. It's all my early stuff's assassin stuff. I wrote a book called Assassin Nation. In fact, what was it? Sex Castle, and then I did Rock Candy Mountain, which does not have assassin stuff, and it was also nominated for an Eisner, which is a hobo kung fu epic. Those are maybe my two. If I was being objective, those are maybe my two best books. But as I get more, it's widening. But I feel I'm emotionally indebted to both of those books in such a way. Rock Candy Mountain is another book that I recently reread, and I wouldn't change anything. I'm so pleased with it. So those two that I did somewhere in there, I did Kill Them All, which is my love letter to 90s action movies, which is like if John Woo did a Die Hard. I forget the order. Assassination I did with Eric Henderson, who's one of my best friends, and I think arguably one of the best artists in comics, which is about the world's former greatest hitman. They're all hitmen. Is now like a mob leader, and he's being targeted for hits. So he hires the 20 best hitmen in the world to be his bodyguards. It does not go well. Somebody did a book club of that like 6 months ago, John. So I reread it. Really? I would have told you prior to 6 months ago that Assassination was my weakest book, and I reread it. I'm like, you know what? It's really good. It's really fun. And at the time, I think because of the editorial process was very frustrating for me. I had to take stuff out I didn't want to. And I think I had in the moment, I was mad at it, right? But I reread it for this book club because I was like, I don't know the characters' names except for one because he has a dirty name. And they'll ask me questions. I'll be like, I don't know who that is. And that's really embarrassing. That I really love it. I think Assassination is really good. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's just a ton of fun. Before then, I did Mars Attacks with Chris Schweitzer, who's my best friend and sort of a virtual studio mate. I adore him. I think he has slept on his illustration. He's unbelievable. We did Mars Attacks. We don't even like Mars Attacks. I think that's maybe my third best book from Dynamite. It's really hard to get because Dynamite doesn't like to sell books, but it's about a father and son working out their problems as the world ends due to the Martian invasion.
Sure.
They find a dog. There's a dog in that. His name's Butthead, which, by the way, I think that's right. His name is Butthead. And I just rewatched The Jerk, Steve Martin's The Jerk, which is, of course, a classic. And maybe the dog's name is Asshole. I can't remember. But I was like, shit, I subconsciously named the dog the same as The Jerk named its dog. Anyway, that's an aside.
I like it.
Then,
of course, Rick and Morty.
Oh yeah, I did Rick and Morty for 5 years,
which was great.
That's guilt-free Rick and Morty reading now in retrospect of the last year. We did 6 Sidekicks of Trigger Keaton with Schweitzer, which was named one of the 10 best books of the year by the New York Public Library System, which is amazing. That's a great book. And then I Hate This Place. I Hate This Place, which was nominated for an Eisner, for my third Eisner. 2
volumes of that. Absolutely. Here's the cover for volume 2.
Yeah, there's one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for issue 2. Volume 2 comes out. That's issue 2. Volume 2 comes out soon, the end of the year. It's got a great cover. It's so good. But that was about a couple who inherits a ranch where everything's bad. It's only bad things. They can't leave. We love it. Thank you, Dennis Hoffman. Dennis Hoffman is a good guy. We can't say it enough. We love Dennis Hoffman coming in with the good stuff. And then Where Monsters Lie, which was about a gated community for slasher villains, of course, that a final girl, now special agent, shows up because he finally finds him. He's been trained. I always say Where Monsters Lie that it's all your sort of horror trope characters in one place. And then the special agent shows up, and the special agent is Batman if his parents were killed by Jason. Like, it's just a completely different motivation, but it's the same. He spent his whole life preparing to fight monsters, and he finally finds them. And I guess I told you before, unannounced, we're starting on another volume, a second arc. I'm very excited about it. Piotr will be back, who's, as I talk about artists who draw the thing I say without doing bits, he nailed it. He did such a great job. I could not have asked, just like Steve with Peacemaker, Mark Ellerby on Rick and Morty. There's certain artists that they're just perfect for what I want to do. Agreed. And they only elevate it. They only elevate my stuff. And it's amazing. It's such an honor to get to work with people like that. That's all. I think that's everything.
Well,
Oh, Old Head. I did a book called Old Head. That I
sure.
drew. Are you kidding me? Jesus Christ. Old Head.
Yes, well, again, when it's not you drawing it yourself, you find these great partners that really understand
Very lucky.
the vibe you're going for, man. No, absolutely.
Well, and I didn't like Piotr for Where Mountains Lie was kind of like, would you want to use this guy? He's the one. And I was like, well, if this is the list, I guess he's the one. For Artyom Topolin on I Hate This Place, it's basically his first full-length comic. He's Russian, and it could have been a nightmare. He did a pretty good job. We got an Eisner nomination, so no complaints. Steve Pugh was on a list. Like I'm at a point with like for the creator and stuff, it's very easy because like Erica and I wanted to work with each other because we knew each other. I met Erica before she had Squirrel Girl, before I had Sex Cat, so we were just hustling. We were just at a show hustling.
Sure.
And we were friends, and so when she was done with Squirrel Girl, she was like, "We should do a book while I have 8 months to do a book." You know what I mean? And
yes,
and Skybound happened to be there. Schweitzer is one of my dearest friends, and so Mars Attacks was just like Thanos. They're like, "Do you want to do Mars Attacks?" And I'm like, "I don't really care about Mars Attacks, but let me think of a story." And I immediately had a story, and I said, "Schweitzer, is this a good story?" And he's like, "Yeah, tell him I'll draw it." Again, not how it works. And they're like, "We love Schweitzer; he can draw it." But that's not how comics work. So most of the time, it's kind of you either get a list or at some point, hopefully soon, it'll be work with big name. This guy I like, this big name guy, right? But for now, I've been very lucky with artists. Knock on wood, because I've heard some horror stories from some of my peers. Who was the best collaborator? Says Kings.
Okay, I didn't want to put you in the spot like that because again, because you love Schweitzer, Erica, and you have a great.
It's not
Pew.
It's not Schweitzer. It's not Schweitzer. Here's the thing: there's a difference between who I think did the best job and who was the best collaborator. And I will say, listen, I think I'm trying to teach my kids this. They don't listen, but everyone's got to find out what their meaning of life is. And for me, it's love and it's self-improvement. It's love and it's self-improvement. And so as a writer and as a human, I'm always trying to get better, which is like we said earlier, I'm trying to figure out superhero stories now, right? Collaboration's really hard because I started as a cartoonist and I did everything. And I see things like a cartoonist. I see it the way I would draw it. And guys like Ellerby, guys like Steve Pugh and Piotr even on I would be like, I can't draw this scene. I can see it. So I can write it for someone else to draw it. And then to see them take that and make it better, I would say best collaborator would probably be one of those three.
Okay.
Erica and Schweitzer took what I did and they were like, if I was doing it in regards to, they would say, I want to add 2 panels to this page. And I was like, I would have added 4 panels. You know what I mean? And so
yeah,
which book looks the best and who is the best collaborator are two things. I am coming off literally the last issue of Peacemaker. I'm crazy high on Steve's work. For the superhero universe, I can't imagine a better collaborator today. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's gonna be this guy on Marvel Unleashed, Hervas. His art is way too good to be drawing that book, and so it's a weird sort of transition I'm making, right? Where it's like, you know who I like, man. I'm actually unannounced doing another book with this guy, but I'll tell you who I worked with. This is not the answer to that question, but I'll tell you who I worked with, and thought I got to work with this guy again. And like I was like, this guy is going to be, if he doesn't become a huge name, I'll be shocked. I did the Creep Show anthology, Eisner nominated, with a guy named Fran Galan. Fran Galan, I think, had a Carnage book come out. He just did Dune. He's done some other stuff. His work on that 8-issue or 8-page, 10-page story.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I mean, like I was blown away. I was blown away. He does sequential storytelling stuff that's so smart and so quiet. I had a page where sort of all these bad things happen to kids on bikes as they race away from vampires. And I could see it in my head, but I couldn't draw it, right? I could see the movie version of it. And you write it and you just go, I hope he nailed it. And so I was like, he's so good. I'm like, this guy's going to be he's going to be a huge star. Listen, you can say stuff like that. I don't know if it'll be true. He's going to be he's so good. And when that ended, Fran was like, let's do it. We should do another thing together. And I was like, absolutely, we should, please. And he says to me, John, which this was probably a year ago, he's like, I don't want to do horror and I don't want to do comedy. And I was like, well, those are the two things I'm currently doing. So we're doing like a crime thing for Boom, unannounced. He has sent in 2 pages. He's unbelievably good. So I'm very stoked. I hope that he also is a great collaborator because no problems with Creepshow. He's been very open. He asked to me the right question. I'm very excited about it. And the hope is it's a 2-book thing where we're going to kind of be doing books together I really hope, because I think he's so good. But what will most likely happen is this book will come out and like Grant Morrison will steal him away. Someone's going to steal him. Tom King's going to steal him away from me. And that's fine. Good for him. I makes all the money in the world. Fran Galan, I think, is really good. He's really good.
It's happened. I saw that happen with Greg Smallwood, and that's, again, another genius.
Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying.
Can you imagine? I'm really good friends with Matt Kent, who's obviously really good friends with Jeff Lemire, and I never met Jeff Lemire. And we ran into each other at ALA, and at some point, we're talking about just superhero stuff, the same thing. He's like, I'm trying to figure it out. And he's like, oh, this, and that. And I'm like, oh, you had Greg Smallwood on that, right? And he's like, yeah. Like, I can't imagine. Greg Smallwood's on a different, he's doing things differently.
But amazing. No, I hear you, man. You're killing it, Kyle. And I'm really happy.
We're trying, man.
Well, again, it's so great when, I become aware of someone. I won't say, because I didn't discover you. You and I talked back in Cincinnati back in the day. But when I became aware,
way back in the day,
like,
Cincinnati was a long time ago.
Going on. Then Rick and Morty and all your creator-owned stuff. But it is so great that DC and Marvel get you and are giving you these.
So far,
well,
far, right? Knock on wood for that too.
Absolutely. So, Peacemaker is wrapping up, and then coming up
soon, 6.
Yeah, and Wild Dog starts in November, right?
The end of November, I think. Yeah.
Okay. And Unleashed comes out
today.
Oh my God! Oh, that's great. I'm glad we're talking today. Beautiful, man. 100%.
Marvel Unleashed #1's and go to your local comic shop. It's there today.
Absolutely.
And it's good. I think it's really good. They let me tell the story I wanted to tell.
Oh no.
I think by the end of those 4 issues, it's going to do what I want people to do. They're going to laugh. They're going to cry. And you get your big hero spectacular. Hopefully, that's really probably the hardest part. But they're going to laugh. They're going to cry. And I hope everyone falls in love with. Yeah, he did Roadie. I have not seen that. I've not seen the Roadie with Tim Seeley. Frank's unbelievable. He's so good. I hope I get to work with that guy for a while.
Excellent, man.
Also, he did something with Cullen Bunn, and I need to talk to Cullen Bunn because I feel like he's one of those guys who somehow finds everybody early. Right? He always has a great artist, and he gets them early.
That's true.
I got to be like, what's your? Is he going through DeviantArt? I don't know what people do. I don't know if people find artists.
I hear you, man. No, and then Seeley's another guy like that too. So no, I get
some guys have a secret. They have some secret to finding these guys.
Absolutely, Kyle. You'll forgive me. I got to wrap, but I want to thank you as always for coming on. And it sounds like you got cool stuff coming up when the crime thing for Boom is ready. Obviously, come back. And if there's something earlier, a reason to talk, I'm always
I have a ton of stuff coming out. I'm currently writing 4 books, and I have 7. I have 3 more I'm potentially doing, and that's without knowing whatever DC or Marvel is going to throw at me next, where I'm at right now. So I'm the busiest I've ever been. Yeah. It's thanks to guys like you, John. It's thanks to you guys like you for talking about my work and letting me come in, talk to people. It's important, man. This is the only way we can sort of spread the word. And if no one says anything good about you, then no one thinks anything good about you. You know what I mean?
Well, just another fan with a platform, and I'm happy to share it with you, man, anytime you need it. So
I'm glad to be on the platform.
Well, I know me and the fans appreciate you coming here. So
hey, awesome. We love it.
Everybody, thanks a lot for watching tonight. Joe Casey coming on to talk about Junior Baker. And his the final cutoff, I think, for orders is Monday and everything. So join us for that. Until then, stay safe, stay happy, stay healthy.